companies are starting to raise the question, what is the difference between quantitative growth and
Right.
qualitative growth?
Right.
And maybe you and I talked about that last time, but what does your growth look like? And if you can truly get into a closed loop, as Bill McDonough always said, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
If you can recapture and just keep it going. Interface Flora, they've made huge headway in that. They're mining landfills.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I'm not sure that really leads down a feminine path, but it's a different way of looking at business, and it's redefining what the rules of the game of business are.
Well, and I do remember my point now was about the sufficiency piece, and that was something that I got from Lynn Twist in the Soul of Money, which is somewhere in the capitalist, the strive for increased profitability, and wealth, we surpass where our companies are thriving sufficiently and even in prosperity, but we go into this uber prosperity place where it's no longer sustainable on the other side.
Right.
And so is $100 billion company who is aligned to the greater good better than a $200 billion company that's not, and so where do we start to, look at the sufficiency piece of when it's enough, and also prosperous?
Right. And how do we set up those rewards, explicit, implicit, and include Wall Street in the game? Even though they've set up the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, that's in part a game, and I think it's a start, but it is definitely not sufficient to really drive companies to really look at and change their business model, their service, what what I would say, and the inclusion of the environment and societies as part of the stakeholders that they are responsible to.
Yeah. And what that makes me think is that a large part of it falls on the investors too, which is all of us, because when we start to say, I'm willing to earn, 8% doing the right thing over 12% not doing the right thing, then we can all kind of relax, because it's this, this push to increase profitability that maybe we're all guilty of.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah.
There's a ways to go.
Yeah, for sure. Let's shift gears a little bit on. So as I told you before, this website was inspired by a lot of observations, but also when His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that the world would be saved by the Western woman, and I'm curious to know if you heard that statement before, and what your thoughts were around it.
Yeah, I had not heard that statement verbatim, but in I want to say September of 2006, I had the honor of being part of the first Connecting for Change for the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education. And what they did was they brought together 60 private and 60 public sector representatives so that we would come together, and the gentleman who organized this, the executive director of the Dalai Lama Center, Charles Holmes, his approach is all around connecting for change. So how do we bring seemingly very different entities together around a common goal or question? And so that was the genesis of this this time with the Dalai Lama. And we had 2 days of planning before the Dalai Lama came and actually spent a full day with the 120 of us. And we had split off into different groups to come up with the questions that we wanted to pose to the Dalai Lama and create a generative dialogue. And it was so interesting as we got to the end of the second day and we were preparing to go into this day with the Dalai Lama. It was, so who do we put in the circle with him? So only 12 people could go into the circle with the Dalai Lama. And they chose the 12 women in the room. So we got to sit in the circle with the Dalai Lama. And I was just two seats away from him, and I remember so vividly when he began talking about his grandmother. And he was pulling at the skin on his arm, and he said, "My grandmother is here with me every day. And the role that women have to play in the world is critical. And now is the time when you need to really step into your role as leaders." Um, I wish I had heard him say exactly what you just did, but that was really, I think, the tone of what he was saying. And the Hawaiians, the Polynesians, they were saying the same thing. It's time for the matriarchal approach to not rule the world, but we really need to bring it back into the everyday dialogue. So the Dalai Lama has been certainly he's had a strong impact on me. I wish that message were more widely heard. Not that it's not communicated, I'm not sure it's heard. And, I think what it evokes for a lot of people in power today is, if that happens, there's a loss associated with that. There's a loss of control. There's a loss of power. And, I believe that, power, like love, that's limitless. Leadership is limitless. There's no end to it, but it's how you lead. It's what is your power? How do you use your power? And I think that is in part what the message of the Dalai Lama is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and leading in abundance and not in fear. Which is that concept that there is enough for everyone. There's enough resources. There's enough opportunity, so that we don't have to get into this locked-in place of me versus
Right.
you. Yeah.